it's occurred to me that we need a new type of award. And in the coming future, we are going to define everything. It's inevitable. We can't escape it unless we start burning books. And so I think a lot of that leads into why we write our own histories. And so we burn history and destroy and we rebuild. However, if we had a perfect state of mutual respect and acceptance, how how does the mind continue to develop consistently? So I used to say that we should, well, used to say, I still say it. I mean, at this point, we should all be Einsteins. We should all be Newtons and Van Goghs and Plato's or Socrateses. But the point is that how do we still approve and offer to people the same respect of our past so that people who just simply for coming first, just because they came before you, doesn't necessarily mean they're you're lesser, and like, because progress is going to stop at some point. And so how I came to this, I was thinking about quantum wave cancellations, the physics forum that I like on Facebook. It mentioned consciousness again, and so when it comes to how I understood and developed my own theories versus microtubules and versus now another theory that is asymptotic, well, functions in I just read about it. What is it? A strong nuclear force. Now, how do I interpret nuclear forces is completely different than these other physicists. And so I think that since these are all so widely regarded and accepted, that when I talk about quantum wave cancellations in the neurons of your brain, that's not dropped down to the explicit subatomic level. You're not talking about different particles. You're talking about just looking at the ocean and accepting charges and how, well, the improbability of quantum mechanics can also amplify and manipulate, well, I suppose, nuclear forces. And so that's how I see the two working together. See, I don't know anything about it. It's just, what is consciousness? Somebody asked one day. And so I was like, well, what if at the neurons we have quantum wave cancellations, and like how I designed how to calculate true random numbers, can we just put a bunch of numbers into a pool as long as we implement all of the formulas at the same time? Can the number that's being pulled out not necessarily be traced, except can the brain somehow choose it? And so with quantum wave cancellations, the neuron, the center of the neurons, I didn't know anything about microtubules at that point, and whoever this new guy is. Anyway, so these awards I'm talking about, how do we keep people from deconstructing? Because if they have nothing left to feel, same intellectual joy that we have as I do, since I don't read, I have no idea who these people are. I just literally think all the time, and I have my down periods, but for the most part, yeah, my brain is just going everywhere, every which way. And do I do it for awards? Well, other people are not like that, and they like awards, and so we could design a sort of, because philosophy and science are always going to develop, though language changes, that we can have a translation to theories of the past, and you in the future could have the exact same idea in theory. And what if we can prove how they came to it honestly? Now that's the whole problem. How do we prove that they did it honestly? That's very difficult to do because you can't. And there's so many fake fucking people. But there would be a lineage like a Newton Award and anybody that came up with these original theories that you eventually you weed out the title per se. The whole point is that they did come first, but it doesn't mean that other people didn't have the same idea too. And you're trying to weed out the hypocrisy that can confound and deconstruct people just as likely so that we're all just cognitive, we're all free thinkers and we're all genius based, that we're all these Einsteins, but we're not labeling ourselves as Einsteins either. And it's still a very, it's just a fresh idea that it has. So it all goes back to when people would call me a communist because I discovered the laws of free will, and I pursue the idea of a true utopian society, and so I use the thesos. You can't explain this to other people when you talk to them anywhere, online or in person, but you talk to anybody about a utopia. So I'm like, well, I don't give a fuck about a reputation. I don't care if you name something after me or not. Eventually it became I can have nothing named after me. And then when I started learning that I am self-corrupting, where I'm making choices over my actual predisposed methods of philosophy, that I would deconstruct them, and then I'd find these other variables, and I'd work for and against. Now, I went on a tangent there. The whole point is that as people, we need because then you have that same paradox in where people need purpose, and purpose is, well, Marxist. Is the same thing in philosophy, not Marxist philosophy. I'm saying it's giving that title to something to own it, and why I hate so many scientists that don't give a proper title to something so that it's interpretable. They want their name to control with us before you even get to it. And so many great and true physicists like Einstein, for instance, that's why we say his name, why we respect his name so much, is it's not Schrodinger's equation. Now, his equations were actual constructs of his brain, and they were inventions as a technique to use math to correlate to physics. And so that is a compounding paradox as well. But then you get other people that come later, and I'm not going to name any of them right now, but that there are a lot of theories in physics where people just don't want you to interpret what they're talking about. And it's because they want to put a flag on a mountaintop and say that nobody ever came before and nobody can ever come after. And so there's that, and how to just it's not even just like a Nobel, you know what I mean? It's more like this is what you achieved because you had the exact same idea as this idea, or you were capable of finding a new path in mathematical theory to correlate to that same idea, and so on and so forth. That like an algorithm that we could have for an award system of all human knowledge, it's really difficult to explain that I believe in the future we're not going to have degrees anymore. I mean, it's already an outdated system. People are not genuinely capable of naturally being that way. I'm not going to get into the other side note there where it leads to like just because I'm smarter than you or you're dumber or something like that, you don't deserve to have the things that you want or to have joy or freedoms. No, we're just talking about the physics and how we can try to get people to all be their own fish being judged for trying to climb a tree. Something like that. Still a good quote. Have a good soul, though.